Hi guys, welcome to this episode of the Change is Key podcast. Me, Shane, as always. So this episode is a little bit different from some of the other ones, or most of the other ones, for a couple of reasons. So first of all, I'll be uploading the video version of this to my new YouTube channel. Some of you might have seen that I posted about that on Instagram recently. So if anyone wants to check that out, you can see where you can subscribe to that in my link tree in the bio of my Instagram. So that's one of the reasons this episode is different, is to let people see the video version of this, which some people might prefer. And something I might do more going forward as well is to make the video versions of these recordings accessible. Another reason this episode is different as well is because it's one where I'll be really going in more into my own experiences of some of the stuff I've touched on a little bit throughout the episodes. Obviously, most of the episodes have had guests, and with that will obviously come their stories, their experiences, and just my conversation with them and the kind of stuff that we both, I suppose, have come to understand about self-development or about coaching or reading or any of the other things that have come up in those conversations. So like I said, this one is really just all about my experiences and some of the stuff that I've gone through, and just a real, I suppose, deeper understanding of that for people. So what I was going to talk about was my experience of going through a breakup, and maybe some of the tips that people can take from that of what to do or what not to do. I'm also going to do this in two parts. So I thought it might be useful to make this first part some of the things that people should try to avoid doing. Sometimes it's useful to be knowledgeable on what not to do as well as what to do. So I'll make the second part more about the things that are better to do, the things that will actually help you. But I thought it might be useful first to just go through some of the stuff I did that, given the second opportunity, I definitely wouldn't do again. But at the same time, I suppose I don't blame myself either for doing a lot of that stuff, because at the time, that was the mindset I was in. And sometimes you can't see the wood from the trees either. You know, you're kind of so embedded into a certain mindset that you don't even recognize your behavior, or you do, but you think it's kind of okay, or you kind of tell yourself it's temporary. Now with the benefit of hindsight, like I said, I wouldn't do a lot of that stuff again. Sometimes you need that hindsight to kind of recognize that. But that's what I mean about it being maybe useful to other people in terms of what not to do, so people can maybe avoid kind of going down that rabbit hole of that really negative mindset, really kind of limiting beliefs and just bad habits as well. So the breakup I went through is something I've touched on a little bit in previous episodes, but not something I've gone into huge detail on. I suppose partly out of the vulnerability that kind of brings up. Like I would have mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it's vulnerable even to just do a podcast or to do any kind of content, put yourself out there. So I knew after a certain amount of time of getting past that I would be more comfortable then bringing other things up, like my experience of a breakup, or some of the other things I'm going to mention in this recording. So I suppose the first thing, and like I said there about kind of almost not blaming myself for some of the things I did, that would be the first tip I would give as to what not to do, is to not blame yourself. And I suppose some of these things can be applied to other situations as well, not necessarily just a breakup. I think a breakup is a good example of a situation that happens where you can really just start to have a negative mindset and really let the feelings that come out of that just apply to everything across the board, every kind of area of life. But I suppose some of these things, like I say, can be applied to other areas as well. But with a breakup, that would be the first thing, is to not blame yourself. Even if you feel like you did something wrong, or you know, you feel like it was your fault. Sometimes relationships just don't work out. You know, it's easy to have feelings of, you know, resentment and you know, all that kind of stuff. Could be at the person, at just the situation, whatever. You know, but I think you know, most of the resentment I had was actually towards myself. You know, blaming myself, should have done this, should have done that. Even going back to times well before the breakup, thinking, you know, a year ago, if I had done this, you know, which is just a waste of time, really, because obviously things that happened in the past you can't change or can't take back. And you know, there is that kind of cliche thing as well of if it's not meant to be, it's not meant to be. That was something I kind of found hard to take on board as well, was hearing that from people, those sort of cliches. You know, sometimes it's hard to know what to say to someone was in my position at that time. It's hard to know what advice to give, or what sort of what things to say. And actually, I spoke about this to Niamh Fitzpatrick in the episode I did with her, where just with grief in general, it's sometimes you see on people's faces that they're not sure what to say, or, you know, what's the right thing to say. But she sort of made the point that just even showing up for the person grieving is just kind of enough sometimes, you know. But the point is that you can't be blaming yourself for whatever happened. It's, you know, it's obviously a difficult situation to navigate, and like I said, sometimes it just doesn't work out. It's not necessarily anybody's fault, and I certainly felt in my case it wasn't anybody's fault in particular. You know, I don't think it was one where anyone really did something explicitly wrong, or where there was particular blame to be placed on one or the other of the couple, you know. So all the more reason to not blame yourself, you know, because again, like I said, you start going down this rabbit hole, and you start then blaming yourself for other things too. Like I said, about applying these tips maybe to other areas in life. It can be the same if you're operating in a negative mindset and you're blaming yourself for a breakup. You could then start easily blaming yourself for other things that maybe go wrong in life. Blaming yourself for not, you know, getting the job you wanted, or blaming yourself for a fight with a friend, or, you know, it can easily spiral into all other things. So to just try and catch the thoughts like that are coming up early, I would say. Again, that's something that's come up in previous episodes, particularly with coaches, because coaches will tell you a lot, that like your language is so important, your self-talk is so important. The earlier you can try to catch those kind of thoughts, negative limiting thoughts, you know, and write them down if it helps. The earlier you can do that, the less it will sort of spiral out of control and just show up in every kind of part of your life. And I said there as well about blaming yourself in terms of should have done this, should have done that. Like should, I think, is the worst word in the whole English language. It's such a pointless word, really, when you think about it. It's of absolutely no help. And so that was a word that started showing up in my self-talk, or even in my talk out loud to other people, was, you know, should have done this. Why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do this when I had the chance? Again, that just doesn't help. And it's just an extension of just blaming yourself. So again, like in my situation, I don't think there was a kind of magic fix that, you know, if one little thing was different, you know, it would have worked out. I think it was a combination of lots of little things that added up to a situation that just wasn't working out, and it was the right decision to end it, so for both people. So so again, you know, should have done this, should have said that, should have done such and such, just doesn't help. But it just makes you feel worse, and it just, you know, you start thinking. And I mean, of course, it's natural in one way to want to go back and, you know, rewind, and I would do this differently and I wouldn't have done that. But, you know, the past is the past. You can't change it, unfortunately. It just makes you feel worse about it all. You know, so another thing I would say as well to try to avoid doing is to isolate yourself from people. Definitely don't do that. I did feel like that was one thing I was happy that I avoided doing. I did feel like I made a conscious effort to kind of reach out to friends and stuff for support, and kind of be surrounded by them. And that's another thing I've mentioned before on the podcast as well. So I know from my experience the benefit of that. I spoke a little bit before about how helpful some of the lads were in terms of just, and like with the grief thing with Niamh Fitzpatrick, like she was saying, it's not even that there's a magic sentence somebody will say to just fix it all. You know, it's sometimes it's just them being there, it's just them showing up. Because it's not easy when you're on the other side of that and you're kind of showing up for the person who's grieving or whatever. You'll know how difficult it is, or you know, you're thinking, what do I say? Do I, you know, you're conscious of saying the right thing, or saying too much or saying too little, or, you know, just showing up is kind of helpful for the person. And so yeah, definitely avoid isolating yourself, because as well as not having that support then from friends, those negative and limiting thoughts I talked about will just really take over all the more, because you've nobody to bounce it off as well. You know, you've kind of you're just cutting yourself off from the rest of the world, from your circle. Your friends as well would see it from a different perspective. They might be able to offer a sort of different view on it than you have. They're seeing it with a fresh pair of eyes, hearing it with a fresh pair of ears. They'll be able to offer a new perspective that you probably haven't thought of because you're in the middle of it. So be open to hearing that, even if it's something you think you don't want to hear. I mean, one of the thoughts I had was, I wish my friends were kind of saying that it will work out, or, you know, that there's still a chance, or things like that. I suppose be ready maybe to hear maybe what you don't want to hear, but that will end up being a good thing. You'll end up seeing that as a good thing. I'll go into that more, as I said, in the second part of this, where I go more into actually what you should do. So big thing not to do is to isolate yourself from friends or family or whatever it is. I suppose as well, the mindset I was in, really where that came from was the fact that I kind of attached my sense of happiness or fulfillment to being in a relationship. And the relationship was great while it lasted. You know, it was, you know, like I said, it was, I don't blame her. I don't, you know, I don't blame myself anymore either. So, but even if a relationship is really good and really strong, you can't kind of hinge your own happiness on that, because if it ends, you know, you end up thinking that you have nothing, or, you know, that there's a massive hole there now, or a massive gap. And then it's easy to slip into the kind of mindset where you start thinking, you know, okay, well, I'll just find somebody new or find somebody else and then I'll be happy. And now it's just a vicious circle where you're constantly hinging your own happiness on somebody else being there. And that's kind of just looking for external validation as well. Of course, you can be happy in a relationship, and that can be a significant part of your life and make you happy and everything, but it can't be, your happiness can't rest on that, on the success of that. Think about how much of a threat that is, really. Like, a threat and reward is something I spoke about earlier in the podcasts. We're coming out of my study of coaching. We were learning about reward state of thinking and threat state of thinking. That's a huge threat, to be thinking that if this relationship doesn't work out, I won't be happy. And I spoke about the book Manifest before a little bit, and Sarah Wolf was talking about it when she was on. Very good book by Roxy Nafousi. She talks in that book about almost the more you think about what you don't have, the more you'll actually attract what you don't want, or, it's kind of, the more you focus on what you're lacking, the world will almost respond to that and give you more of that feeling of lacking, and more of that feeling of, missed opportunities, or whatever it is. So big thing is to not attach happiness to the relationship, to not put pressure on you or the other person for the relationship to work out for the rest of your life, which is a long time, because that's just a pressure. It's, it's just a big burden. And like I say, operating in that threat mode is not good for either person. So I suppose, with all that mindset stuff, with all that negative stuff, one of the big things I did wrong, which at the start, which is what I meant at the start when I said, if I could go back, I would do it differently, was using vices as a crutch, I suppose, as a way to get through it. So 3 big vices, I would say, I kind of latched on to. One was drinking. I wouldn't say I was starting to become an alcoholic or anything. I wouldn't say I was abusing it, but it definitely became a big kind of part of the week, a big sort of thing to look forward to. Because I've never been a huge drinker, really. I've always, I suppose, enjoyed going out and having a laugh with friends and stuff. But when it starts to show up more and more, when it starts to, I think, show up during the week when you're working, and then having a couple in the evening or whatever, it seems harmless maybe, but I think the more you do that, it's just a bad habit. And, when every weekend almost was filled just by going out and drinking and stuff, obviously that's not good as well. It's kind of like I said about attaching happiness to the relationship. This is kind of attaching happiness to, again, something external, or a bad habit. I'm in this negative mindset, and I kind of can't get out of it, but I'll just drink, and that will kind of numb it almost. So like I said, I wasn't abusing it really as such, but was definitely doing it too much, and was definitely associating that with kind of getting out of that mindset, as if that was going to help me, when clearly it wasn't. And that's also not me blaming the people I was drinking with at any of those times. Obviously that was my decision to do that. I had the power to say no to that, or to not do that. And I think at my age as well, I don't think you can kind of blame peer pressure, the same way you could maybe as a teenager or something. So that's really, I suppose, getting into responsibility and kind of accepting your own decision making and stuff, while at the same time trying not to be too hard on yourself as well. But yeah, I mean, like I said, the mindset I was in was just, maybe have a few throughout the week, and then really look forward to this weekend. and just, go on the lash, and I'll kind of forget about the stuff that's going on, and then it starts again the following week. I suppose another one was Coke. I'm hugely reluctant to say that, kind of on a public platform, but I did feel like it was important to bring that up and talk about that a little bit, because again, it's obviously another really bad vice to latch on to. It's something I hadn't done before until after coming out of the relationship, and I just felt like, again, going back to blaming yourself, I just felt like I was a massive hypocrite, because I'd had the opportunity to do it before and never did it. And the reasons I sort of kept saying for not doing it were partly fear of doing it, I suppose, fear of the unknown. Sometimes you read these stories about people who take, a bad line, or, and they kind of get really unlucky and overdose, or worse. So fear of that, like I said, fear of the unknown. Even, like, I suppose, the fact I used to study criminology and then work in criminology, that was also making me feel like a massive hypocrite for doing that. So there's lots of reasons I kind of kept telling myself as to why I wouldn't do it, and I was sort of almost quite proud of the my stubbornness about not doing it. But then, so, like I said, then I just felt like a massive hypocrite when I kind of flipped that then, and started to do it. I wouldn't say often, but now and again. Again, I wouldn't say I was abusing it as such, but was definitely starting to almost rely on it a little bit. Like with drinking, it was kind of looking forward to it at the weekend. Go out this weekend, have a few lines, have a few drinks. That will make the night out better, and that will make the kind of negative stuff that's going on easier to deal with, or it will help me forget about it for the weekend or something. So yeah, there was lots of, like I said, self-blame around that, and just kind of erratic almost behavior as well. A couple of people started to say to me, who saw me sort of take it a few times, started to kind of say to me that you should stop doing it. It's almost, a case of, I'm sure a lot of people have done it and tried it, and people do kind of tell you that everybody's tried it, so to not be kind of ashamed of doing it once or twice. But when you start doing it more than that, when you start doing it a few times, or you start, like I said, looking forward to it at the weekend, that's a different story. That's kind of starts to get a bit dangerous, really. So a couple of people kind of said, like, should you be doing it this much? Or, I thought you said last time would be your last time doing it. So I was kind of justifying, saying, oh yeah, but do it again this weekend because such and such is on. I didn't want to kind of go to this like house party without doing it, because it would be less fun, or such and such a night is coming up in a couple of weeks. After that, I'll stop doing it. Again, that's the dangerous territory to be getting into, because you're telling your mind, you're always kind of kicking the can down the road, and you know what I mean. You're sort of you're just putting it off and putting it off. Telling your mind that it's okay to just keep doing it a bit more and a bit more. Eventually, I'll stop doing it. So yeah, obviously that was a massive mistake, really. That something I shouldn't have got into. And I kind of count myself lucky now, because I seem to be able to control it as much as like I said, I was doing it kind of now and again. and particularly for about, I would say for about 4 months just after the breakup is when I was kind of doing it. Not every single weekend for that 4 months, but kind of now and again spread throughout it. So, but I count myself almost lucky because I seem to be able to control it. Where if there was a weekend where I felt like I did a lot, I would sort of be able to take a little bit of a break from it and say I'm not going to do it again for a little while. That actually sounds stupid saying that now, because really what I should have said was I'm not doing it again. So like I said about kicking the can down the road, it's just self-deceiving to say I won't do it again for a little while. Because now you're telling your mind, okay, just a little bit of a break and then do it again. And now you're looking forward to it subconsciously. But there are other people who are less lucky, who wouldn't be able to kind of do that, would just, maybe not have the same level of self-control, or I guess some people have kind of maybe more addictive personalities than others. Some people kind of have a history of addiction, or a history of addiction in the family, or whatever it is. So now I really think of myself lucky that, I didn't go down that road, or that I didn't really kind of let it take over, because it's easy to do that, and people forget that sometimes, that there's a kind of perception of people who do become addicted to any kind of drugs, that they lead a certain lifestyle, or they come from a certain place, or they come from a certain background, or whatever it is. Whereas, normal person like me, or other people I've seen do it, could easily go down a kind of bad road, and it's very, very hard to come back from that then. Or you could even be, like I said it earlier, one of the kind of unlucky people that do it once and don't live to talk about it, or overdose and end up in hospital or something. So that was almost a kind of arrogance on my part, where it was like, oh, that won't happen to me, or, I'm just doing this for the fun of it, and, and I'll kind of stop later. So yeah, massive thing to avoid doing. And then smoking was the other one of the kind of three kind of hooks, I suppose, I had. And that is definitely the one that's the hardest to quit, or to, kick to the side. Weirdly, with smoking as well, it's the one that's probably health-wise is most damaging. Well, maybe, I'm not sure. But obviously on your lungs and heart and stuff, it's obviously damaging health-wise. But yeah, it's the one that's most easy to justify doing, because the kind of effects of it are not visible, maybe, or they're not immediate. You kind of kid yourself that oh, I'm still young, and again, like I'll quit it later. Do you know what I mean? I'll I have a night out coming up. I'll want to smoke on that, or I have something that I'm stressed about coming up, and that, so I need smoke to get through that, or you kind of again kick the can down the road. But with drinking, if you get drunk, it's very visible. Everyone can see it. You can feel it in yourself. You know in your head you're getting a bit drunk. You start to slur your words, whatever it is. The effects of it are visible. So you can maybe start to take a bit of a pause and go, I think I'm maybe doing this a little too much. Or obviously the after effects the day after with a hangover as well. Then with coke or whatever kind of drug, you kind of have that buzz, and you have that sort of bit of confidence that the coke gives you. Obviously that was completely false, a false sense of confidence. But the after effects for the day after, I found it that it made the hangover worse. Mix and drink on coke was a terrible idea. on something that should absolutely not be done. So the point is that with those, the effects for you within yourself, or the effects that other people can see, other people can see visibly that you're acting different or whatever. That makes it easier to maybe take that pause and kind of say, like, I think I'm going overboard with this, or for other people to tell you, I think you should slow down on that or cut it out or whatever. With smoking, you don't get that. So, you could go through a full box, 2 boxes, and your behavior doesn't change, your speech doesn't change. If anything, it's a social thing, and it's made a socially acceptable thing, this thing of like social smoking, which I still kind of do myself, which is still a bad idea. And that's what I mean about it being so hard to stop, is because we associate being social with smoking, which is just nonsense, really. Because the social element of it is meeting people or talking to your friends or having a laugh, not the smoking, so it bugs me, but I fall victim to that myself, so again, that's not anybody else's fault that I do that. It's obviously that's my decision. So it's still something that I'm trying to like cut out completely. Something I'm trying to coach myself out of completely, and gradually kind of getting there. But that's the problem with that. Like I said, with smoking, is that because the effects of it are not visible, or because you don't change your behavior, you think it's fine, or you think, well, sure, I'm grand, and health-wise, I'm obviously okay, because I'm still able to go for a run, I'm still able to play football, all the things I do. I'm still able to go for whatever, a walk, and not feel tired, or but obviously the more you do that, the more those things will start to show up, and then they become long term, or so those were the vices or bad habits that I got into, which are definitely things to avoid. So those would be the main things I would say to avoid, getting into bad habits and justifying them, and continuing to do them, attaching happiness to your relationship, and then if it breaks up, you now associate that with unhappiness, just in the sense of I am going to be unhappy, or I'm going to be unfulfilled, or my life will have this big gap. So that's not me saying don't be unhappy or upset with a breakup. Of course, that's a natural response, but it's just to not attach it completely to that, blaming yourself, isolating yourself from people. And I suppose, just to go back to that one a little bit, just really being willing to be vulnerable. I think, again, vulnerability is something that's come up on the podcast before, which I think is important. And it's not only vulnerability in terms of, say, creating content, like some of the stuff I'm doing, or changing career path, where there are maybe obvious benefits to it, where it's kind of it's scary and it's different, but there's going to be benefits to it because it's what I really want to do. In this case, I think vulnerability in terms of I'm just going to have to say it to my friends that this is what's going on and this is what I'm thinking. They might tell me, in not so many words, to cop on, or to stop thinking that way, or they might, kind of, again, not say the thing I want to hear. They might say, well, look, it didn't work out for this reason and that reason, and that's the way it is, and it's going to have to be, that's going to have to stay in the past, and that's, your future is going to have to be away from that, but just to be, I think, a little bit vulnerable in that sense of kind of opening up about that to your friends or to family or whoever it is, and be ready to hear that kind of stuff, knowing that you might not have the best reaction to it straight away, or you might not take it on board straight away as something positive, but you will come to see that later down the line, Another big thing then, I think, just to kind of, I suppose, sum all that up, is to really not let it define you. That was a big thing that a couple of people said to me, was to really, like, don't let this become you. It's kind of like when you hear people say you're not your thoughts. You know, you can acknowledge your thoughts, but not without letting them become reality. So in this case, it's kind of a little bit like that, where it's, this is something that has happened to me, or this is something that I've experienced, but it's not me. It's not, it doesn't make me, or doesn't make my whole life, or, in a year, 2 years, 10 years, I'm not still going to be defined by this. I'll have met new people. I'll have done lots of different things. I've experienced different things. Obviously you don't want to be in a position and that far down the line where you're still looking back at this going, well, all this stuff is going well, but if I had just done this, that relationship would have worked out, and then I'd be in an even better position now. That's a bad kind of place to start going into. So again, that's not me kind of what's the word? Just sort of saying, that's not me saying it's easy, or it's not me saying that just get on with it or anything like that. Obviously, like I said, I've been there and it's not easy, but you just have to think of it as one part of your life, and really try focusing on the other parts that are maybe going well. Like I said, there for me, it was friends, or sport, exercise, family, whatever else it was. Those areas of life are not really affected by a breakup, so that's what I mean about not letting it define you. Because no matter how much you've lost with that relationship, you still have those other things. You can still show up and do your sport, or do your hobbies, or be with your friends. You haven't lost any of that. So to focus in on that as much as you can, and really kind of be grateful for that, and be grateful for what you have. I suppose as an extension of that, then to try avoid as well comparing, that kind of old cliche, that comparison is the thief of joy. I think it really is. And it is very easy to compare that when you're kind of newly single, compare yourself to couples, compare yourself to a friend who might be in a relationship, and go, oh, that was me not so long ago, or I wish I was them now, or so again, comparison is not a good door to open. It really just, because as well, you can just sort of start to become jealous maybe then of other people who you like. Say if it's a friend who's in a relationship, you don't want to start becoming jealous of someone you're friends with, and now that affects your friendship as well going forward. You don't want to start seeing that friend differently because they're in a relationship and you're not anymore. They're no less of a friend to you. They haven't done anything wrong. Just because you've broken up doesn't mean that they should too, to be on the same page as you. So just I suppose, they're no less of a friend to you, like I said, or don't maybe start to look at that friendship differently, or be jealous, or even if you're kind of walking down the street somewhere, you see a couple, don't compare. You don't, like, especially with people you don't know, or people maybe you only know on social media. You don't know the ins and outs of their kind of life. You don't know their day to day. You don't know maybe if they're struggling with that relationship and it could end tomorrow. So what you see on the exterior, or what you see in a kind of very short snippet on social media, is not necessarily the whole truth. But even if it is, and even if their life is kind of very good, or their relationship is very good, still don't compare, because it just doesn't help you. it doesn't help you really. It starts bringing up feelings of jealousy, and just makes you feel worse about your own situation. So those are the things I would say to avoid. And I hope this doesn't come across like a lecture either, because it's obviously coming from my own experience of it. And like my relationship was long term. Like I said at the start, I kind of spoke a little bit about it on the podcast, without going into huge detail. But it was 6 years, so it was a very long time. And I suppose the longer it goes on, maybe the harder it is to come out the other side of it and deal with the kind of loss. But I think I'm hoping anyway that some people can kind of relate to it, and like obviously lads especially. I think it's an area that maybe is not spoken about enough. Like an area within kind of mental health or whatever, or within personal development, or so yeah, that's my kind of experience of it. Those are some of the things I did which I shouldn't have done, which were bad ways of dealing with it. And like I said, I'm going to do a second part then where I talk more about the things I did do that helped me, or the things I maybe would have done more of that would have helped me more. So again, that's all from my own experience. I suppose with a little bit of stuff that I've read as well, like I mentioned Roxy Nafusi's book Manifest earlier. You can always get, I suppose, a little bit of inspiration or kind of tips from reading things like that, or watching content or whatever it is. But I'm hoping, as I said, people find that relatable and helpful, and watch out and listen out for the second part, which will be more positive, more focused on what to do. So thanks for listening and watching.